Alright everyone, in this video we're going to talk about dividing fractions. There are a few ways to notate division. So a divided by b is equal to a slash b, which is equal to a over b. And really the most important rule when it comes to dividing fractions with other fractions is that the division of one fraction by another fraction will be equivalent or equal to multiplying the fraction on the numerator by the inverse of the fraction on the denominator. And this definition makes sense when we represent the division in this last way, right? So just using abstract letters then, if we had some a over b divided by c over d, in order to compute this division, we would take a over b, that's our numerator fraction, and we would multiply that by d over c. Now, I should say as an aside here, technically when I say inverse, what I mean is what we call the multiplicative inverse. And the multiplicative inverse is the number that you multiply another number by in order to get to the number 1. And we can find the multiplicative inverse by switching the numerator and denominator value of a number. So for instance, if we wanted the inverse of 4, or 4 is 4 over 1, we switch the denominator and numerator values. So 1 over 4 will be the inverse of 4 over 1. And we can see if we multiply these two numbers together, we have 4 times 1 on the top, so that's 4, and 1 times 4 at the bottom, so that's 4. We get the number 1. So that's what makes these two numbers the multiplicative inverse of one another. And I really say this because you can also have the word inverse used in other ways. So sometimes later on in this course, actually, I talk about inverse operations, which is different from my use of the word inverse here. It used to confuse me. That's why I'm mentioning it. In any case, this trick here is useful because it allows us to reduce problems about dividing fractions to problems involving multiplying fractions. And if you saw the video in this series on multiplying fractions is really easy. We just multiply the numerators together and the denominator terms together, and that's it. So for instance, let's consider an example. If we have 1 over 2, so 1/2 divided by 1/3, that will be equal to 1/2, that's our numerator fraction, times by 3 over 1, the inverse of our denominator fraction. And that is all equal to, if we just compute that multiplication, 1 times 3 is 3 on the top, 2 times 1 is 2 on the bottom. Now, a really good question is, why does this rule work? And to see why this works, let's take example number 1 again. We have 1/2 divided by 1/3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator fraction 3 over 1, that inverse of our denominator term. Now, I'll just note here that 3 over 1 over 3 over 1 is just equal to 1. It's like 2 over 2 or 4 over 4. So I'm not changing the value of 1/2 divided by 1/3 when I'm multiplying that division by 3 over 1 over 3 over 1. But as we know, when we multiply fractions, we multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So on the top then we get 1/2 times 3 over 1, and on the bottom we get 1/3 times 3 over 1. And when we do this, we can see that our denominator fractions, 1 over 3 times 3 over 1, well, just computing that multiplication, I get 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 1 is 3, so I get 1 on the denominator. So the denominator fractions then drop out, and we've shown that 1 over 2 divided by 1 over 3 is equal to 1 over 2 times 3 over 1. So we've really demonstrated our rule that the division of two fractions is equal to and can be reimagined as the numerator fraction multiplied by the inverse of the denominator fraction. All right, let's think about a second and final example just for practice. I'll think about perhaps a more complicated example. Perhaps let's do 1/2 divided by 4 divided by 3/4. Now, here I can see that 4 is also equal to 4 over 1. So I can rewrite that first division as 1/2 divided by 4 over 1, and then that's divided by 3 over 4. So then I can easily use my rule here. We can deal with that first division. We take the multiplicative inverse of 4 over 1, which is 1 over 4, and we multiply 1/2 by 1 over 4, and just computing that, we get 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 4 is 8. So then we've managed to reduce the problem to 1 over 8 divided by 3 over 4. And we can use our rule again. We'll take 3 over 4, we'll take the inverse of that, which is 4 over 3. So this reduces to 1 over 8 times 4 over 3. 1 times 4 is 4. 8 times 3 is 24. Now 4 goes into 24 6 times and into itself once. So that reduces to 1 over 6. That's our second example. And that's really it for this trick, this way that we deal with dividing fractions with one another. If you have any questions, please comment below. If you are following the full course, we can now move on to the next topic. If you would like written notes to help you on your journey, or even just to support this channel to help me make more videos, you can visit my store. There should be a banner below this video, and hopefully you can see there on sale the notes, Beginner Math Skills for Economics Students. Please like and subscribe, comment below, share, all of that. It all helps. Any feedback is welcome too. Thanks everyone. Hope you guys are having a good day.